Welcome to the new ZeroPoint module. We're kicking it off today with Cylinder and Quest for Designs. Really what we're trying to do with this episode is just get back to 0 points, basically. We took a break for a little while. In the meantime, there's been some fun on the project. There's been some exciting news. There's been a lot of stuff going on. So we're just going to try to catch up on all of it the best we can. Before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with nonsensus. So what we're doing now is a little bit different than what we did in the past. We realized that the way we were doing nonsensus, even though it was meant to be something different than what the rest of the industry is doing, we realized we were still kind of falling in that same mold. So nonsensus, by the time this airs, any tickets that I've bought have been refunded. We are going to be moving it to a different time of the year, a different part of the country, and a completely different format. So let me explain that. So the idea first of the different part of the country is we want to get closer to the middle of the United States and the middle of Canada, and then the middle and both, if we can. If not, it might be somewhere else, but we're just trying to get to an area that's easier for more people to get to, essentially, geographically. Second, the time of the year, because it's probably going to be a lot further north than it was before, we're probably going to be changing that to a warmer time of the year. It's not set in stone yet, but we're thinking about summertime. I know it's already summertime now, but plans have changed just now, so it's probably going to be pushed out to like next spring or summer. And then what we're doing, instead of going with the standard like convention format where everybody goes to some hotel and there's conference rooms in the convention center and all that stuff. We actually decided what a lot of people thought sounded fun when we talked to a small group was, let's go out, let's maybe have like a piece of land, a campsite, maybe actual cabins, like a summer camp, rent one of those out. We can still have all of our talks. We can still have a venue that has the projector and all that stuff to where we can do presentations, but everyone can actually get outside and touch grass and go play at the same time. So that's the current state of it right now. Everything's still kind of in its infancy form on getting it planned, but just be aware that nonsensus is changing, but it's changing for the better, in my opinion. And I think everyone's going to be excited when they see what we actually have put together.
Very cool. As somebody that attended this last year, I welcome the different change of pace because I've been to so many conventions. I've been to so many corporate type of events. And for us to stand out and be different, and we are a different breed, a different group of people. We're not your typical, crypto crowd. I think it's really interesting, and I feel like it makes a lot of sense for you to align that way. And being from the West, I love the outdoors, and I love, the idea of being able to have little cabins and little kind of bungalows and getaways, but then they would be able to come together and have talks and, do little community activities and stuff. So I think that's a really good change of pace.
Yeah, and we still want to do the same thing, same type of thing that we did where, we still include some food for everybody. And there's still, food and drinks. You're not getting gouged for it or anything like that. There's just some stuff that's out that anybody can have type of thing, we're not trying to sell $10 bottles of water to people and things like that, like other events do too. So we're still keeping the same spirit. It's just, let's do it. If we're going to be different, let's be different, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
In a woods with the boys?
Say again?
In a woods, 4chan X style with the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not sure I 100% catch the reference. I don't browse 4chan often these days, so
that's what they call it. It's just a word for saying in the woods. They just say in a woods.
Gotcha. No, sounds 4chan. Makes sense. So other than that, we wanted to get into some other subjects here, like, just the current state of Dero, current state of privacy. Right now, I'm sure everybody knows that, there's a bug out there that leaks metadata on transactions. It doesn't de-anonymize the whole network. It does make it to where some people can put together some information, but it's not enough information, especially in my opinion, to gather true balances or anything like that. So the devs are currently working on quantum resistance, and They're currently working on, I would imagine, the solution for this at the same time. I think that it might be related. Obviously, the devs have been a little bit quiet. This isn't the first time that's happened. Let's be real. This is like maybe the third or fourth time that the devs have gone quiet for a long period of time, and there is screaming that the devs have left or the devs are dead or whatever. That's why Captain's Dead's become a meme at this point. But just personally, there have been people who have said that their messages are being read by the devs. Just no responses yet, but that's still pretty common in this situation. So with that kind of out of the way, I know for a fact that there's a few different things that are being worked on by the Civilware team that are actually pretty interesting. Unfortunately, they are still in alpha, and the devs don't want to share those yet. But I think when it comes out, everybody will be very excited. As soon as it goes to beta, it'll be public. So we'll just have to wait on them. I don't think it's very far off. From what they demoed for me, it's pretty complete. They're just not ready to share it with, right now they're sharing it with other devs. And then after, the initial bugs and stuff are worked out at the alpha level, that'll be coming out. So work has not stopped. There's obviously multiple groups doing other things as well. And let's see, from my side, as far as development updates or anything like that goes, pretty much done. Quest, I know you've been involved with a couple other third-party projects. I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about with any of those.
Yeah, sure. So I am the leads on Tree Market, which is a decentralized platform that's based off of the Dero blockchain. And so I've been working with them. I was really initially brought on as someone to do marketing for them and run like their marketing initiatives. And this was 3 months ago, back in April. And since then, one of the co-founders had left. There was some turmoil in the project. They did a fundraiser, started building some things in there. And for the last month and a half now, I've been trying to rein in the project and just really put the solid foundation for a Web3 type of crypto project together and kind of circle the wagons and try to figure out, first of all, when we can have a product up and running for people that have invested in the product, and then also, identifying, different groups of individuals that would be interested in the message of a private, decentralized peer-to-peer marketplace and communicating with them and talking with them. So I've been kind of the lead person for the last month or so. It's challenging. There's a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of fighting back and forth. The two co-founders have some disagreements, and one sees that the other person owes them money and all this stuff. And so I've came in, and actually played the part of mediator and did some fact finding and tried to figure out what actually happened and all there. And these are things that regardless of how Tree Market ends up, whether it survives or whether it, fizzles out, there's a lot of different things that I could take from this project to say, these are the things that should have happened that didn't happen. These are the things that should not have happened that did happen, and, kind of document lessons learned for future projects. So this is just one of the multiple initiatives that I'm working on, but doing my best to try to steer this project straight.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs, right?
Yep, unfortunately.
Well, cool. Let's see. So, Chillionaire, you were sharing some pretty cool ideas before we got started here. We weren't actually recording yet, but you were actually talking about some things that you saw currently going on in just the world in general and privacy space. And I was thinking, there's a lot of people out there that don't seem to be taking in the big picture of the world along with crypto. Like the crypto space is one thing. You got Bitcoin, transparent chains, privacy chains. You have DAGs and centralized chains like Solana and stuff like that. And everyone just talks about the differences of this technology, but there's not a lot of people that seem to realize that, well, on the lower level, regulations are going to be changing a lot. We've been very aware of that with Dero. We've been very weary of a lot of the approaches to certain things because of regulations. For example, like when Dero was getting delisted from an exchange, we heard a bunch of people from Monero saying, "Oh, ha ha ha, you got delisted, you're crap," and then they started getting delisted, right? And now they're saying, oh, but it's good for privacy or whatever. It's just kind of funny. And then there's also global turmoil. I mean, there's economic turmoil. There is conflict on the horizon in a big way. And I don't think people are necessarily looking at crypto as a solution to some of the problems that might arise from this. Do you have any opinion on some of the issues that might be on the horizon that people might be ignoring?
Yes. It's a very broad and difficult question, that one.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll give you a bit of a short little bit of info about, I don't want to call it my background, that makes it sound really formal and like I'm wearing a suit, but I am working on a project called Crowdsurance, which is the point of that was when I say crowdsurance, you think of crowdfunding, right? And my work at the moment is about studying, well, if we approached insurance a bit more like crowdfunding, what could that look like? Because there is a huge, absolutely huge, multi-billions, if not trillion plus insurance industry, and yet it's barely talked about, despite occupying so much jobs and time spent on it in the economy. And you basically can't do anything without insurance. Can't drive cars. I guess you could own a house, but you certainly couldn't get a mortgage on the house in most cases. So there's this economic rail that is very, very poorly understood. It's very hard to find information I've found about insurance, and most people's experiences in regards to it are with the sales end or the customer support end of insurance, and they're usually not good stories. So when we're in communities talking about blockchain or distributed ledger technologies, well, there is some very interesting developments going on with applying those technologies to the problem of insurance. And there's a lot of things I'm trying to say here, so I'll kind of try and wrap them around and quick fire it. So first of all, one of the biggest problems out there is that these insurance companies have become really big, really centralized, and most importantly, their business model is designed to collect as much data as they can get away with and analyze that and use that to make decisions about you, about how you're going to live, how you have lived, and the decisions you'll make in the future. So when we talk about privacy, there's an absolutely huge industry called insurance that we're forced to engage with. That's very profit center is focused on eliminating as much of our privacy as possible. And this is for good reason, because people lie. People will say, oh yeah, I'm a really responsible driver. And they'll get in, they'll get in the Camry with a quart bottle of vodka that they've already drunk, right? So insurance companies have to deal with us, but we also have to deal with them. And so applying blockchain technology like Etherisk is doing right now, and they're using the Ethereum blockchain. But the problem with that is that's not private. So imagine like they're out there trying to work with people in Kenya, for example. They're saying, oh, well, if you're a farmer, you buy a bag of seeds. Well, there's an insurance policy on the blockchain that comes with that purchase of seeds. And that's really innovative. These people live in corrupt governments that can turn bad on a dime. And this information about who's covered and under what conditions made publicly is a recipe for disaster, because it will encourage kidnapping. It will encourage all kinds of fraud. It will encourage all kinds of meddling from local goons. And when power vacuums come in, they'll look to sweep up all of this economic activity for themselves to sustain the power structure they're trying to create. And so for me, what brings me to Dero is the search for a way of doing insurance that is more free and open, whilst at the same time being private. And I hope that wasn't too many words. It's tough to summarize it all.
No, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to realize that once something is on a public ledger, especially a blockchain, it's not only readable by governments, but it's readable by everybody. And so, like you were saying, like with the corrupt governments being incentivized to target people, it also incentivizes people to target other people for different reasons, of course, right? But it's kind of an issue. Like I always use the analogy that, when you have money in your wallet, nobody knows how much money is in your wallet. It's just, some pieces of paper with numbers on them, and it's kind of your little private area that you have that nobody else can see into. And then when you go to the store, you give them as much as they need, and they give you a change, and you move on. With a blockchain like Bitcoin, for example, as soon as you pay that person, or anybody knows what your wallet address is, your wallet isn't really like what your wallet is today in the real world. Your wallet is now just open for anybody to see how much money you have and whether or not you're worth robbing. And now you're a target, right?
Yes, and Chainalysis and other companies like this work very extensively with the infamous three-letter agencies, and they're getting very good at navigating around these blockchains to discover things about us that we might not like them to know. And the people listening to this broadcast would be very familiar with the importance of privacy, but this is something that is missing from the general dialogue. And I don't know when or if it's going to become more important. Usually with the quote-unquote normies, the paradigm shift always seems to happen a little too late. And because of that, that energy gets transferred by lots of organized media and think tanks and agitators that are prepared for it. And they push that into a direction that further sort of puts the general population in a trap or a malaise. It gives them a half solution. It doesn't really solve their problem. So I guess I see a lot of conversations around, and Dero is no exception, but this happens all the time generally in technology, let alone crypto, is conversations about, well, how does this reach mainstream adoption? And I think a lot of people's ideas around it are, well, we'll just keep signing people up to these ledgers because they'll one day value what we value. The problem is that we've already seen that almost everyone else only sees cryptocurrency as basically a gambling arena, a place to speculate, and a lot of them lost money doing it, so they're actually burned. A lot of people are not interested in getting involved in crypto for the sake of the technology. It seems to make a lot of sense, and I guess this would be my question to open up in general, is moving forward, what would you see as the ways that we could create industries that crypto would come in and solve the underlying problems of those industries? And that would lead to the adoption. It would actually save money or reach people that could not otherwise be reached. I mentioned farmers in Kenya. The thing about these people, and Kenya is one of the more prosperous African countries, but generally speaking, in these impoverished countries or these countries that are quite unbanked, a lot of them that are building infrastructure, for example, are entirely skipping copper and fiber telephone lines and things like that. They're actually going straight to cell connections, which is excellent for blockchain tech. I mean, you want people using technology that's distributed as well with the devices they're using and they're walking around. The people that are signing up for these policies, they have never been able to be reached by traditional mediums. The banks have never been able to reach them because of the operating costs of going out there, because they have to go set up an office. And to set up that office, they have to deal with a ton of bureaucratic red tape. And that red tape, even if they get past it, is not always implemented consistently. There's often a dual legal system, that there's one written on the books, and then there's one actually enforced on the ground with bribes, corruption, and goons that come around that demand protection money, or just decide that when the regime changes, that you were a supporter of the old regime and you need to go. So it's not a good place to do business. And there's a huge opportunity, even just with insurance, for the cost savings of administrating it through a distributed technology like Dero or transparently like with Etherisk that no one talks about. And there must be tons of other opportunities like these. And so we see people sitting around and they're talking about, well, how will it get adoption? While there's so many problems on the table that the technology itself can aim to solve. And I guess I'll close with this. I've seen a lot of Bitcoin maxis in the past, and they've been accused of not putting the cart before the horse, but like creating a problem. They've basically, it's been described that blockchain is as of like a problem looking for a solution, basically, that it's not out there.
You mean a solution looking for a problem?
Yeah, sure. I always find that quote confusing, but basically, that's been the accusation. And I think that if we really take a step back and think about it, actually the opposite is true. There's so much out there that's begging for a distributed and hopefully private solution, and we've not even scratched the surface.
Right, and I mean, well, the ability to do a lot of this stuff is still fairly new. I mean, people... Earlier, we were discussing how long, Dero's been around. It'll be 7 years in December. And in blockchain time, that's a ridiculous amount of time to be around. People need to realize that, I mean, even with layer one privacy with smart contracts on top of it has only really existed for a few years now. And actually, I don't even think it's been 2 full years. It seems like it's been longer, but it hasn't. So, like, this technology is still in its infancy, like a lot of other things. And so people, it reminds me of like the early days of the internet where some people can see the potential and some people, it used to be some people were like, wow, this is amazing. Look at all these things I can do. And then other people were just like, why would you want to do that? And I think blockchain in general is kind of still in that area. And I think this technology that we're talking about in particular is definitely in that area. There's just people who either don't understand it or don't care. But it kind of like we were saying earlier, or you were saying earlier, like eventually there is going to be a problem that requires the solution. And when people actually need it is when they'll realize it.
Why do we need Google? We've got Yellow Pages. I get it delivered every year.
Yeah, well, I think the maturity model of any type of technology, if you study, the automobile and how it came to be and the enhancements and the efficiencies and the infrastructure that was needed to be able to travel from city to city and town to town, an automobile is very different than on a horse, right? We're in a very similar frame of mind. Like you said, Cryptoid, this is all very new technology. So we have not even scratched the surface on optimizing the efficiencies that are available through blockchain, the different solutions that are provided available through blockchain. And if I think about it from like a devil's advocate point of view, I mean, what better for an AI system to learn and get fed information than an open public blockchain? So in my opinion, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, those things were created so that they could feed all the data into AI so they can start working on building these algorithms based on human activity.
So Edward Snowden had a great talk at Consensus a few years ago that was basically talking about how AI is going to be by governments and intelligence agencies. And it's not necessarily supposed to be like, oh no, the government's watching you, but that's pretty much what the point was. It was kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen it was a cheesy movie, but it was like War Games 2. And there was an AI basically that was used to link people to other people to see who the terrorists were and how likely they were to commit crimes. Kind of like Minority Report-ish. And that's pretty much what his speech was about. All this data that has been gathered for years. There was, I'm sure most people are familiar with what a data lake is. And a data lake is just when you're collecting data for the sake of collecting data, and then you just have a lake of data that, what are we going to do with it? I don't know, but the data's there if we ever need it. With all the advancements in AI over the past even year or two, those data lakes are now very useful to train on. And to think that companies like Chainalysis aren't using AI already to combine with other sources of information, the problem to me really comes from, it's not necessarily they come to a conclusion about you or who you are necessarily, but coming to a wrong conclusion is also very dangerous because AI does what it does, and we're really not even 100% sure why it thinks the way it does. But everyone trusts that the answer that it gives must be correct because it's a smart computer. We're dumb people, right? So there's a lot to be said about AI and blockchain and Chainalysis, in my opinion, but those are the main points that I think people really miss when they think about that kind of stuff. Actually, leading up to 2001, I know in American society, I imagine in most societies, people valued their privacy, and they did not want people snooping around in their business. But after September 11th, it just got normalized that everybody is being watched by all the large agencies. All your phone conversations are recorded. All your internet activities tracked. All the library books you check out. You know what I mean? Like, that was just all made fun of back in the day. Like, ooh, who cares? But literally a couple years before that, people really didn't want the government or anybody else snooping in their business. And now we live in an age of the lack of privacy being normalized.
Well, one of the things we have to fight against is that corporations have realized that what consumers value most with the devices is arguably convenience, and they'll trade pretty much everything else to get that convenience. And you can see this in the different paths that Android and the iOS development philosophy has gone. iOS has become the complete, as they say, the walled garden. It just becomes ever more increasingly restrictive. If you're used to using Android, for example, and I have a de-Googled phone, which is better than it could be, but one probably still shouldn't have a phone. But, privacy is about compromises. And I found when I switched to an iPhone, there would be simple things that I wanted to do that I couldn't do, or that I had to go through and do in a very convoluted way that the company Apple had engineered that I had to do it. And on the flip side, I would look at this, and probably many here would look at this, and we would say, well, this is horrible. This is taking away my freedom. I want to have a bit more of a relationship with my technology. I want to know it a bit more. I want to understand how it works. And there's, on the complete opposite side, probably the vast majority of people who don't want to have anything to do with it, who don't want to know anything about how it works, and who willingly pay for it to become increasingly, the inner workings of it to become increasingly unavailable to them. We've seen the same thing happen with cars. Go back 50 years, sometimes even 30 years, you're looking at cars that you can fix with some simple socket wrenches, some simple parts you have lying around. You can diagnose it yourself. Moving forward to modern cars, the only way you can fix them, and in many cases manufacturers are trying to prevent you from fixing them, is to have a dedicated machine that plugs in and basically talks to the car and tells you what is supposedly the problem. And so this general trend of moving further and further away, of having sovereignty over our devices, is extremely pernicious, because as soon as we hand that away, we hand the sovereignty away, we hand the privacy away, we save a little bit of time, and it is more convenient, but we lose access to actually understanding how the fundamental things that are shaping our reality as the tools that we use actually work. And it's scary how many people have lost even a basic understanding of how computers operate. And this has been an intentional drive from corporations, because they can make a lot of money by promoting the opposites of privacy. Everything is aligned to make money by getting in the way of privacy. I think that's the fundamental problem we have right now. The corporations are set up to make profit from de-anonymizing us, from collecting these data lakes, as you talk about. And so probably the only way to get out of this is to build a parallel society, because anonymity becomes our asymmetric advantage, because if they can see us, they have far more tools at their disposal to understand us than we have to understand them. So the only way we could ever win is by enhancing our privacy and our anonymity. And I think Dero is a tool that could help us do that. And if we can apply that to building real-world solutions to problems that also these traditional approaches haven't been able to solve, I think we have on our hands a very real opportunity to become entrepreneurs whilst forwarding a bit of a Trojan horse of privacy to come with it. Is we say, hey, I'm going to come with you, I'm going to open my technology briefcase, I'm going to solve your problem. And it's also a benevolent thing, because in solving your problem, I have added countless nodes of privacy all over the world. who've signed up for. They didn't sign up for the value system of the cypherpunk mentality. They signed up for the solution to their problem. They signed up to, get insurance so that if they have a bad season, they're not destitute. But what's come in the back end is something that slowly builds up a grassroots resistance and parallel society. And that's what I'm interested in. And I think that what brings me to Dero is the potentiality that it might be one of those tools that could make that a reality.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier about global conflict too. I mean, that goes for countless situations. And okay, so like as far as redundancy goes, as far as being in a hostile environment, there's a lot of people that are like, you use Kenya as an example, but there's just a lot of totalitarian governments that exist all over the world. And there's probably going to be a shift in a lot of other governments with global conflict, right? So there are going to be some people who were once in a friendly country, like the old Soviet Union, for example. Those countries were independent. They had, moderate amount of freedom. Iran's another one. And then a new government comes in and completely changes everything. And all of a sudden, they are basically owned by the state, and they have no freedom, and they're being consistently monitored. They don't have any freedom of speech. They don't even have limited freedom of speech in a lot of cases. And they have no way to transact without the permission of the government. If there's food rationing going on, they can't transact with specific, like, oh, you bought too much sugar today, you're cut off. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to be said about not only what you're saying is, there are just basic use cases that will eventually drive adoption on their own. But then there's also, I want to call it a use case, but at the same time, it's kind of like unfortunate situations that may also drive adoption because of the decentralized nature of it and the possibility to protect one's information.
And people in the Western world are complacent, right?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, we don't, as Westerners, we don't really have a true idea of what it was like to live in Soviet Russia, for example.
Yeah, good point.
The Argentinians aren't complacent. They'd be much more interested in technology that could protect their wealth, because they've had a handful of occurrences in living memory where the government comes and takes a quarter of the money and then takes a quarter again. And so they know. But a lot of people in the West don't know. A lot of people in the West look back at 2008 and go, oh my God, that was terrible. That's nothing to an Argentinian. Absolutely. It's nothing to a Venezuelan.
Yeah, I worked with some people from Argentina. I'd say it was probably like 2013 or so. And they were telling me, and these were people well off. I mean, like, they were being flown in business class from Argentina to come work on this project. And they were telling me that there was like a black market for US dollars there. And basically, like, they get paid in whatever money they get paid in, and then they would convert it to dollars almost as soon as they could, because the US dollar was stable compared to their currency. And like, no matter how much money they made, they were having trouble keeping up with the inflation there.
And look at the state of the U.S. I mean, the state of the U.S. is like that right now. Like, I've been advocating for the last couple of years, different contracts that I've been in with different employers, that I would prefer not to get paid in U.S. dollars if I can. And I feel like that is going to be just a sentiment that's going to grow and grow. There's going to be a market for that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that nobody seems to be understanding. A friend of mine, me and him were talking about this, I would say 4 or 5 years ago. We were like, you know what? Let's just say like our crypto holdings make us millionaires. Well, then it depends. Does a loaf of bread cost $100,000? So does it matter if you're a millionaire at that point? You know what I mean? Like, it's all relative at a certain point. And I don't think people really realize how much, like Chili was saying, how much like 2008 this is on steroids. People just haven't seen it directly happen to them yet, or they can feel the pinch in the grocery store and with their bills and blah, 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 but they don't really see that it's going to get worse more than likely.
I mean, we're already being told by the kind of the powers that shouldn't be to get used to, and you see these trickle out in the mainstream, news articles. A lot of it's predictive programming or preparing you for things that come down the line. They're talking about you should learn to be happy with less. That's the message. And the younger generations, which I consider myself a part of, but even younger than me, they have it even worse. First of all, they've never grown up without technology. I was privileged to grow up in a household that was far behind the times, let's say. So I had access to technology, but it wasn't cutting edge and it wasn't a huge part of my life. We're looking at young people and they don't know any different. And so there's a double-edged sword to that, because I think these kinds of very young people who know nothing other than an online ecosystem would be the most optimistic and the most able to understand how a digital revolution could take place. And they've been the most aggrieved parties. They're the ones that everyone tells them, and they understand that they've been left without a future. They understand that if they get a job and they do well, they're paying into a system that will never pay them out. They understand that basically we've kicked the can down the road and the can stops with them. And so there's a huge generational resentment, and these people, they could be listless, they could be depressed, they could be suicidal, or they could be channeled into the creation of something that's a parallel economy. And so the pursuit of young blood, of things that would interest them and causes that would interest them. I mean, they've been kind of, and young people have always been like this, but there's been a big move to make young people politically active and politically obsessed. The problem with that is that gets them feeding in to the very same system that has put them in the disenfranchised position they're in right now. So if we could get them to be active, but maybe not politically, maybe more economically and technologically active. Imagine if you had thousands of young people coming into an ecosystem like Dero. Some of them are developers, some of them are interested in spreading the word. Imagine what could happen with that.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the fourth turning.
Yeah, you please refresh me.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, this is basically, but the fourth turning, it has a lot to do with their generation, where they're basically the generation that has to, they're the strongman generation. They're the ones that have to deal with the global conflict. They have to deal with the economic fallout. They have to deal with it's a cycle, and basically the boomers were the best part of the cycle and got all the benefits of it, and now like Gen Z or Y or whatever they're calling them, they're basically the ones that have to deal with the fallout, and it's going to be not going to be easy. I mean, millennials and Gen X are kind of like, it's not like we reaped as many benefits as the boomers did, but we're kind of in a similar situation. But our children are definitely in for a big event, according to that theory.
Isn't that a bit of a psyop also in itself? We're trying to convince young people that everything is doomed and they can't do anything about it other than going through the normal political challenge that Chili mentioned. Because if we think about it, like, it's not that surprising that our data is being used against us. You guys mentioned surveillance system. Well, we've known since the 1950s through Project Echelon that even phone conversations were recorded, and it has never stopped. And for anyone who is technical enough, who've analyzed any communication protocol has been put in place since that time. So if we think about telephone, radio, television, the internet, all of those communication protocols were inherently flawed. So they had either backdoor or weak encryption. So we've been playing this cat and mouse game against the state or whatever form of authority, whether it's corporate or not, where data are being leaked left and right, and that data is being used to trespass and infringe upon our private right. So I understand that the sentiment in the community is kind of low, but Dero still offer the best solution, to my knowledge, for that, because it's the first protocol with encryption that is permanent, using homomorphic encryption, and also L-Gamal cipher. Question for the people who are listening, like, if you're really interested in crypto, like the Bitcoin Maxi, wouldn't that make more sense to be interested in the crypto that has the best cipher, the best form of encryption? Isn't that what crypto is all about?
I feel like people that learned crypto and understand and been a part of different projects and stuff, they figure out, Dero has a way of finding people that kind of know what they're doing and not just your typical, crypto noob. So I feel like a Dero project exists because people that have been involved in crypto and learned about these different protocols, once they understand the problems, the inherent problems with a blockchain, they start looking for other solutions. And, it just takes people a period of time before finding a project like Dero where they say, okay, this is basically what I've been looking for this whole time. And so the more people that are out there that are getting their ass handed to them and losing a bunch of money on crypto, if they're involved, if they care about the technology enough, they will find their way here eventually.
They'll come to privacy tech and they'll think, this is what I thought Bitcoin was, and then I got jaded, and then this is what I realized Bitcoin should have been the whole time.
100% agree. All right, guys. I'd say this is a pretty good stopping point for this part of the conversation. Like I said, we're going to have this in a few different chunks. So I'll just open up the floor for anybody if they want to make any closing statements or anything like that. And then I think we'll go ahead and close this out so that way it's easier for Asylum to edit it later. So if you guys have anything you want to add.
Sure, yeah, I'll start it off with just a final kind of closing statement. So one of the things that we're trying to bring to the Web3 ecosystem and the kind of the 5 core values of what Tree Market is and what it becomes is, one is privacy. There is the foundation of that. We want to make sure that we prioritize the privacy of our users, making sure that personal transaction data is protected through advanced security measures and encryption. People are going to be able to, through Tree Market, to be able to have their information not stored anywhere on databases so that, big tech can go there and sit there and make money off of you. Another thing that we're working towards is transparency, having open and honest communications about our processes, our fees, our policies, doing whatever we can to build trust and accountability with our community. Another thing that's really important to the mission and vision of Tree Market is really just empowerment. We want to be able to have businesses and individuals be able to transact peer-to-peer privately and not be able to get shut down, not be able to get canceled, not be able to get debanked, not get their PayPal or their Patreon shut down. We want to be able to have a true open free market that's welcome and is available for anybody. And then lastly, innovation. We want to try to have the most forward-thinking technologies, but also the forward-thinking solutions for people. Find out what pain points exist in the ecosystem, in the user community by getting feedback, by taking in that feedback and being able to provide solutions. So thanks for letting me say our piece and a good conversation on this talk today.
Oh, thanks for joining. Always appreciate it. MoralPriest joined a little bit later. He might have some more he wants to add before we go, or?
I don't really always just enjoy the conversation about Dero. I'm an engineer for over 20 years. When I discovered Dero, I was in another privacy project before, but Dero really brings it all together, all the latest and greatest blockchain tech. And I think anyone who's serious about their own privacy, sovereignty, is gonna, like Chili said, is gonna eventually find Dero. If we come together and build a circular economy, we'll be unstoppable. Like, we don't need to really fight back in like violent way against the state. We just have to get together and just shield ourselves using this alternative system, like Buckmeister Fuller said. There's no point fighting the existing system. We just have to invent something that render it obsolete.
I agree with MoralPriest, and I guess I want to drop my closing statement on top of his, because I see it as a bit of a continuation of what he's saying, which is this. We think of ourselves, and I've been in a lot of communities that would consider themselves rebels of some kind, sometimes with, sometimes without a cause. We're used to thinking about the odds and the threats and the challenges that we're up against. However, different groups or individuals categorize that. What we often forget is the unique advantages we have with our understanding of technology, certain resources we have at our disposal certain educational resources, even just access to the information on the internet that we have at our disposal that many people in the world do not have access to. So if we think about trying to lift other people up in poor countries, in violent countries, in countries with problems, maybe countries like Argentina, other countries as well, maybe in Africa, or parts of Eastern Europe, countries that we could have a much greater impact, not only when we take our personal currencies over there from our countries, whether it's the pound, the dollar, etc., they have greater buying power, but we also have greater knowledge power when we go over there. We can go over there and implement technologies and make more progress than we can over here, where there is so many regulatory burdens and so many apparatuses of the state that are designed to get in the way. I talked about the insurance industry. It is so in bed with the government that to implement any kind of decentralized insurance that is truly private, sovereign, and does a great job of building a parallel economy, it will immediately be shut down, just like they did with Tornado Cash, which wasn't even trying to rework any kind of industry. It was just trying to be private payments. And they went after those people. So you think that the insurance cartels will not get together and have them go against us? Well, they will if it's done in the West. But if these kinds of ideas like tree market and like works that are based on insurance and like works that are based on all kinds of other financial aspects and data storage aspects, if we take them over to countries that don't have huge governments, that are fairly disorganized, there's much more opportunity to work magic over there. And then when our countries start to collapse, they start to become more authoritarian, restrictive, the net starts to close in, we will be able to use the parallel system that we have built in the places that offer a sandbox with more options and freedom for ourselves when it comes to that, in a way that we would not be able to build it domestically. And I think after all the research I've done, that is my best case, that we need to look to go out and be kinds of technological missionaries, speak and act these values that we have for people that need it more than we need it right now, and will give us the opportunity to implement it more than we would have to implement it in our own domestics.
The bottom-up strategy, I love it.
It's anarchist, basically.
Yeah, but what you're saying is, in the West, we have a lot of this infrastructure and these solutions, and we have corrupt governments, but not to the degree that they're in other countries. We go and get our footing in another country where these people actually desperately need it. They are unbanked. They do need different solutions for payments and to be able to do business. We do there, and in the matter of time where that's starting to break down and starting to be much more authoritarian, we'll have these markets and these networks set up, built in place. This infrastructure will be built so that we can kind of carry that over into the West. I think it's a good strategy.
Not only do I think it's a good strategy, I think it's the only one that would work, because out there, they have far less resources attributed to the state. It has far less tools at its disposal to stop these innovations, and there will be far more, let's say, supportive people, even within the smaller states out there, that might be, even temporarily, during a certain regime or during a certain mood that exists, you'll find pockets of people that are willing to support out there, and it will go a lot further. And if the case that's being made is that this technology truly is resilient, it truly is anti-fragile, it truly can protect people who have every reason to be afraid of their wealth being known about, then there'll be nothing to worry about. But if it can't deliver on those fronts out there, then it will never deliver anywhere else.
Makes sense. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I, again, appreciate everybody showing up. Good talk.